Hi, Declan. Welcome to the Ticket podcast. Today, we're going to be chatting about AI in customer service and the effect it's been having on our teams.
Ruth, delighted to be here. As you know, I'm passionate about AI and customer service, so really looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Yes, stuff that we chat about every day together.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's go over it for the sake of our audience. Why is it important for support leaders to evolve their support org in the age of AI?
So a bit of context. So why is AI important? I think there's been some substantial advances in AI technology over the last kind of year and a half, particularly large language models, the capability of generative AI to really have a conversational feel to how you interact with AI. And I think that's really given the opportunity for support leaders to really think about transforming how they deliver support. AI ML has been around for a while. Support organizations haven't really adopted it at scale. Now there is an imperative, I think, to adopt it at scale because you can transform the customer experience. And particularly if you think about, the AI first messaging, where you think about what does it mean for customers? So an AI agent that's interfacing with your customers. What does it mean for your support reps, where you've got an AI co-pilot that's, assisting and helping your support team? And then as a manager or leader, how do you think about how you analyze and understand the insights that you're gaining from all of your customer interactions? So AI analyst. So when you think about those three components, there really is an opportunity to transform how you deliver support. And more than it being kind of important for support leaders to evolve, I think it's actually essential for support leaders to evolve their organizations to really embrace the opportunity that the AI now presents, and for them really to deliver value back to their businesses in a way that was unthinkable, like literally 18 months ago.
I know when I even think about, say, a year ago, it was around the time we were launching Fin AI Agent. And that was obviously so game changing for us and our team. But maybe you could talk a little bit about how we've evolved our team overall since Fin, and I guess maybe even from a few months before that.
Absolutely. The great thing is working for Intercom, we probably got exposure to the possibility and the advantages of AI early on, ahead of the industry as a whole. And initially we looked at what we called at the time AI Assist, which was a set of kind of rudimentary co-pilot features. So you could summarize conversations, you could maybe change the tone to be either more formal or more informal, etc. And it was great to be able to use those features to expose our team to AI and really get them to think about the possibilities of how AI can change how they work. So using those capabilities initially really got a lot of buy-in from the team and a lot of excitement from the team, particularly as we were able to provide feedback to our own product teams around shaping those particular capabilities. But then when it came to really kind of the most impactful thing that we did starting off was really thinking about the AI agent technology and how we interface with our customers in a way where we could answer questions up front for them without them having to come all the way through to human support. So I think that evolution of really embracing the AI assist feature just to get the team kind of conversant and kind of understanding about the possibilities of AI, and then really using AI agent to game change in terms of the customer interactions and being able to answer, initially very simple questions, but over time, as we built up content and knowledge, like more complex questions, being able to answer them up front in a very conversational way, which is one of the advantages of generative AI. Like that was game changing. And again, like the team loved that. They were getting less routine questions in over time, and they were getting more interesting and more fulfilling work to do. So that evolution, I think, has been really, really important. And I say we had the opportunity, I think, to put our toe in the water earlier than many other organizations, and we've learned a lot as a result.
Yeah, I always speak about how, if I was in a different support org, would I have moved so quickly in terms of using AI? So with us as our own internal customer, there's always like the benefit and pressure of needing to show off our tools to the best of their capabilities. But look at where we are today, as a result of it. Our automated responses and resolutions are off the charts.
And I would have been one of those cautious leaders at a point in time around, do we really want to be very aggressive at rolling this out? And I think when we began to see the benefits and, get customer feedback around it and get our support team feedback around it, I think I was the one then pushing, let's move faster, like, because this is actually really working for our customers, which is the real benchmark.
Yeah, I remember some of those early conversations, when ChatGPT came out first around like, is this going to be, all it says it's going to be, and then like, whoa, yeah, it really is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in terms of response times for customers, We have been like honestly struggling a bit with all of our response times, like as a whole, I guess. And we've so many now customers who are getting like an immediate response, a correct answer from an AI agent.
Absolutely, and like 24/7, like
Yeah.
365 days a year, like it's it's the best sourcing model you're ever going to come across. You're getting a fair proportion of your customer questions answered, all day, every day, almost instantaneously. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said as well around the AI assist functionality, as we were calling it at the time, because I agree, like that was a way to really kind of ease the team into this huge change that was happening. And they had a chance to use tools that were like really for them at the beginning before we started rolling out the functionality to like customer facing.
Absolutely, yeah, got great buy-in from the team,
Yeah.
and the fact that they were able to experience technology early, and then influence it as well, like providing feedback to our product team. Again, one of the advantages of working for a customer support platform company, like we get the opportunity to really influence the product. Yeah,
Yeah, I always think of what you were saying when we were rolling out Fin AI Agent first, is that AI is happening for customer support teams, not to them,
correct. Yeah,
because of that kind of, the story in the industry around like AI and jobs. So I just love that our team really see that advantage, especially now with AI Copilot, and all the huge amount of functionality that it has, and how much that's doing for our teams to actually make them enjoy their work more and be even better at it.
absolutely. And the next phase of Copilot, which we've just launched in the last kind of couple of weeks, like again, it's taking that whole Copilot feature or capability to a totally new level and giving our teams a lot more access to information that they can use to frame better responses for customers. And again, I think the team really appreciate that. It makes their life a lot easier.
Yeah. And next question that I have here, you're segueing nicely, is the new types of roles that we have within our team and that are coming up in the industry. Can you chat a little bit about what we've done at Intercom?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the first things was recognizing the fact that we were moving into a brave new world of automation and practice support, really driven by AI. So, Ruth, your own role was one of the first new roles that we created, like having someone who was solely responsible for driving our kind of automated and proactive support initiatives, driven by AI. So that was the first thing, like actually recognizing this was something that was big. We needed to put as much focus into this as we put into the human support side of our business. So that role was kind of a really critical role for us to establish. We also recognize that it's not AI and automation working in isolation from human support. Like it really has to be an end-to-end experience for our customers. So having a conversation designer as part of our team, was again another key investment that we made. We established that role, we hired into it, and it's really trying to look at, well, what is the customer experience end to end, and not just looking at the different parts of the jigsaw, like actually living the life of a customer and really seeing what that conversation feels like from a customer perspective. And then like, we had obviously Help Center, and we used the Help Center information for AI Agent, but we recognized that we needed to bring that up to a new level. And it's not just the Help Center content, there's lots of other content sources that are feeding Fin, which is our AI agent. And I talk about feeding the AI beast, we really need to get that content in as professional of manner as we can and make sure that AI can use it in an optimal way. So, really changing the help center manager role into a very strategic knowledge management, content management role was another key thing that we've done. And over time, I think we will add other roles into the mix. We'll have to do a lot more around conversation analysis, and that's going to build up either new roles or new skills within the team. But we made some pretty significant changes already, and it's helped us to think quite differently then about the support organization going forward.
Yeah, one of the biggest changes I think we've made to my own team recently, you were speaking about Help Center turns into Knowledge Manager, and how we've pulled internal content under that umbrella now as well to feed AI Copilot. So when you think about your knowledge in two different sections, I suppose one is customer facing in the Help Center for Fin AI Agent to use, and then the other is the internal stuff for Fin Copilot to use. So there's just this huge body of content that needs to be managed now, which has always been the case, but the importance of it now to feed AI is, at a whole new level.
Absolutely. I think one of the key things that we focused on as well was for new product introductions, making sure that we really had the right content and knowledge available as we launch new products to really drive that resolution rate for Fin, our AI agent. So, that's another important consideration as well as you think about this knowledge management, content management. It's not just about the existing content, but how you're creating new content as you introduce new products, new services.
Yeah, and optimizing it constantly to make sure that it's readable both for AI and also for humans who come across the help center as well. People still just go to the help center to find what they need.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
got to think about both dimensions. You
yeah,
can't ignore one. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So one of the things we often talk about in not only our one-to-ones but our team meetings is how support roles are becoming a lot more strategic in organizations rather than operational and tactical as they have been in the past. So can you talk to us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think the overarching focus is that many support organizations have been seen as cost centers in many companies and businesses. And really, with AI and using an AI first approach, you can really transform customer support, customer service into being a value adding center for a business. And what I mean by that is you can move beyond just looking at transactions. Like support is very attritional, transaction driven. You're just trying to keep the queues going and really trying to answer questions as fast as you can. And it's very difficult for a support team to really take a wider view of the customer context and really think about, what's the real issue behind maybe the question or transaction that the customer is asking here or now. So the way I describe it is that support teams will move from being very transactional in focus to being more consultative in focus. And really, again, with AI providing a lot of context and potential to personalize the experience for customers, you can spend a little bit more time and effort with customers moving beyond just the question that they've asked and really thinking about what's the next issue they're likely to encounter and can I prevent that issue happening? Or, based on a summary of the support experience of the customer today, is there actually really a different question that the customer should be asking, but just doesn't know that they need to ask that question? So again, that kind of real value add consultative piece, which ultimately is allowing customers to get more value out of whatever your product or service is. Like that's ultimately what we're all trying to do. Customers made an investment. If they're hitting a blocker or hitting an issue, they're not getting the value that they really want to get out of your product or service. So really removing those blockers, driving a more value driven approach around how you engage with the customers. And that's how you make that transformation from being a cost center into a value center. And in terms of success for that, like how do you think about the success of that? It's really around, ultimately it's around customer loyalty and retention and long-term customer value. But in the short term, like if you've got some kind of customer health metric and you're helping that customer be in a more healthy state, you can measure that and demonstrate that back to the business. And that may lead into looking at the maturity of the customer in terms of how they're using the product and service that you've provided to them and being able to measure that and show that based on the interactions they're having with your support team, they're actually becoming more mature in the use of the product or service. And that's huge value for any business when it comes to loyalty and long-term value.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, the work our team does at the moment where they get an inbound conversation from a customer, they answer whatever question is there, but now they're taking that extra step to see what functionality the customer is or is not using. And if they're paying for something that they're not using that we know is of strategic importance to making a customer successful, they're actually being proactive in, kind of going beyond that, just answering the question that was there and being like, hey, I see you're not using X feature. Can I help you get that set up? Which,
Exactly.
in some ways sounds like that should always be the way, but it hasn't been, right, historically for support teams who are just trying to get through as many bodies of work that are sitting in the queue as possible.
Absolutely. Like, say it's been very transaction driven, whereas when you can flip it and take a more holistic view of the customer, and that's a perfect example of being able to say to the customer, hey, you're not getting all the value out of the product because you haven't done X, Y, or Z, and just giving them pointers as to how they can do that. Like that's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm even thinking about what you were saying around knowledge management a few minutes ago as well, around having the information in the help center when you're releasing a new product or a new feature. Like it sounds so obvious. Like, of course, we should always have been doing that. But when you're trying to figure out where to put your resources for teams, like, I mean, not all teams are actually able to keep up with that, right? But now today, because it's powering AI for both agents and for customers, there's a whole new importance on making sure it absolutely gets done.
Yeah. And there's all flywheel impact from that
Yeah.
then. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So we were speaking there about how things are going to be different for support teams in general in terms of being more strategic. And we kind of touched on support reps and the work that they'll do. And I know last week, with our leadership team, we were discussing how can we help our teams become more consultative. And one thing is like, we never really trained them to do that before, right? We trained them in a kind of a more transactional way years ago. And now we need to figure out a way of helping them understand that customer context and then do other types of work as well.
Yeah, so the sport rep role is going to change quite dramatically, and even before you get into that kind of consultative piece, like they're going to handle more complex questions because a lot of simple questions will have been handled or answered by an AI agent. So straight away the technical focus of the role or the subject matter expertise of the role will change. And you want people to be, subject matter expertise in whatever your product or service is. And that ultimately is more fulfilling for a support rep. So the first thing is job's going to get more interesting. Like all of the mundane work that really support reps don't really want to do. at the end of the day is going to go away. And it's the more interesting work where they can demonstrate their knowledge and expertise, provide for more value to the customer. That's really going to be kind of one of the key differences. Troubleshooting, problem solving skills are things that you really need to think about. How do you enable your team to really hone those all the time and make sure that they are able to then handle the more complex questions that are coming in. Um, we touched on knowledge and content as well. Like you really want to your support team to actually think about not just the engagement they have with the customer, but also question like, why did we have to have that engagement in the first place? So, like, what was missing? Was it a piece of knowledge? Was it a product capability? And drive that kind of almost like continuous improvement mindset as well across the support team, where the first time they answer a question, in the ideal world, will be the last time because they're actually, doing something post that engagement to create knowledge or ask for a feature request or whatever. So again, getting the team to think quite differently about the impact that they can have. Again, it's difficult for support teams today to think beyond the transactions that they do. But in an AI world, particularly where they're handling the more complex nuance issues, they can actually add a lot of value back into the system by recommending improvements and changes. So I think there are some of the key ways that the support role will change.
Yeah, and one of the discussions again on our own leadership team is, we have to enable them to do all this. We have to think about how we measure their performance differently. And we can't just measure in like this sort of productivity mindset of, one case after another, which is kind of the classic way of measuring support success, right? CSAT and productivity. But we have to think differently now because we want the team to spend time with customers and do
Absolutely.
this other work.
Yeah, and you got to be able to give them, credit for that. Like,
Yeah.
however you drive your performance management, like you've got to make sure that you're recognizing, giving attribution for the work that they do beyond the direct customer interactions, because we actually need our human support team to do that. Like they know the customers better than we do, right? So ultimately they can give the best advice around how do we improve the customer experience, and being able to tap into that and feed it into kind of a continuous improvement process or motion is really critical in an AI world. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we spoke about support reps. What about support managers? We know that there's going to be a lot of changes coming there too.
Absolutely. And you touched on a couple of things. Like I think support managers have to think quite differently about KPIs, particularly where you're going to ask your team to go above and beyond for customers in terms of this consultative approach, or where you want them to recommend improvements and changes so that we're driving continuous improvement mindset. You've got to be able to measure that in the right way so you can drive the right performance management and the right enablement as well. Like, and you've touched on that, like how do you enable your team for success? So support manager has to think differently about enabling the team for success, thinking about how they upscale, and we've made some changes. Like we've changed our whole job structure within customer support here at Intercom to take account of the role is changing and the way that managers need to manage changes as well. So even like those job family changes that we've made are pretty key. Um, Thinking about things like capacity planning, like again, support managers have to think about capacity planning. The parameters change. Like you may actually have people in the inbox less time than they were in the past because they're doing more value add work outside of the inbox. So all those things have implications for capacity planning. Bizarrely, your productivity may decrease because there's more complex issues coming in that are being handled by support teams. So you got to think differently about productivity. Now, obviously, you can drive productivity improvements through things like Copilot as well. So you got this tension all the time, more complex work coming in. You offset some of the complexity with Copilot, but you got to think differently about how you capacity plan the team. You may even have to think differently about the hiring patterns that you have. Like you may want to hire in some different skills into the team and focus a lot more on the problem solving piece. You may want to kind of focus more on the kind of EQ side of things as well. Like you really want people to be very empathetic with customers because it is the more complex, impactful issues that are going to come through to the team. So you really want to, make sure you're hiring for people who are happy with that environment where it is a little bit more complex. Maybe the customer is a little bit more frustrated because it's something that's maybe impacting them from a business point of view. So some of the softer skills will actually be more relevant as well. And managers need to take account of that and need to take account of it in the hiring, enablement, ongoing review. QA is another thing that's going to change quite dramatically in this world. QA historically has been around QAing the rep, like a lot of the time, and did the rep do a good job for the customer? But today, that customer experience is a combination of AI, automation, human support. And now I think managers need to think about how do I QA the customer experience from end to end? not just how do I QA the rep component of it. And again, that needs a different mindset from managers and need to think, differently and look at things from a customer lens going forward in a different way than they might have historically.
Yeah, and when I think about the hiring patterns and how to train people will be different, right? So if those kind of easier questions are being dealt with by AI, like what do the new people do? That's still something that we're figuring out as we move into the future. Like if you hire somebody, you can't expect them to just sit down and do all the complex stuff right away. But if Fin AI agent or AI is taking care of some of the easier stuff, like how do you train them up? And that's a world that we're entering into now that we're still figuring out, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean, AI can be your friend here because it can help in the enablement process, and people can learn a lot from the way that AI is answering questions. But again, they're not going to be getting those questions into the queue necessarily, but they may need to learn from it as part of the kind of onboarding experience. So again, you got to think about your onboarding process. It's going to change as well.
Totally. And there's obviously like a broader societal question about education, which we won't get into now. But setting people
Yeah.
up for the future for these more complex roles that they're going to be moving into, when some of those kind of initial roles people would have stepped into, they're going to just look so different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of goals for our team, how do you measure success? I should know the answer to this, but again, for our audience today,
Yeah.
can you talk a bit about how that's changed?
Yeah. So I think one of the big things is we got to think about some new metrics. So for example, we've talked a lot in the last year about things like Fin agent, Fin AI agent resolution rate. So how many of the conversations where Fin gets engaged in is actually providing a resolution to the customer. We got to think about involvement rate. So how many of our conversations can Fin actually get involved in? So there are new parameters we never even talked about a year ago. So there's some of the key metrics that we need to look at. Um, and that is one of the things that we actually report all the way up to our exec, like, and our executive team are interested in those new parameters. So all of a sudden, you know, um, we've taken on a whole new world of importance to the wider organization, particularly because we're a customer service platform, and those new metrics are pretty key. In terms of success from a customer perspective or customer lens, and I touched on this earlier, things like the customer health score, like you have to have some view, is the customer actually using your product in a way that it makes sense for them, and that can layer into some kind of maturity measure as well, like are they actually getting mature usage from the features and functions that they're paying for and that are part of your product or service. So there are all new ways that we will measure success in this new world. So yeah, we do have to think quite differently from a success lens. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think about something that I've heard you say, and I use it over and over again myself, around how one Fin AI agent conversation or chat is not equal to one human chat now. So it's not like for like, because the human work is so much more complex. So then in terms of like you said, productivity for the humans might actually go down and average handling time might go up.
Yeah.
And from a support leader lens, that's like typically you wouldn't want that, but now more of your conversations are going to have immediate first responses and really quick average handling time with the bots, right? And then the human stuff is going to change too. So just around not thinking that everything is equal. I find that when you said that, I was like, yes, this is how I need to explain it.
Yeah, it's a really good point because
Yeah.
people think, for example, if you're resolving 40% of your customer conversations using AI, that you're freeing up 40% of your resource pool. No, you're not
Yeah.
actually, because it's the more simple stuff that you're taking out. And by the way, like the team that are left, they're having to, as I said before, help feed the AI beast. Like AI doesn't work in isolation; it needs knowledge and content, etc. So a lot of dynamics around this, average handle time changes, occupancy levels in the inbox might change. So it's really interesting from that point of view. When you think about how you dimension a support organization going forward, you got to think about so many parameters in a different way.
Yeah. And I think for us and many other support teams as well, if we were running to try and keep up with our response times previously, often AI just helps people start hitting their response times overall.
Yeah.
And that's like the baseline then to begin moving forward with all this other cool stuff that we're chatting about that your team can do. So, what actionable tips then would you advise for support leaders who might only be getting started right now with AI?
Yeah. So one, really encourage people to actually take the step and try something, right? AI is here, it's not going away. It will add value in some dimension in your support operation. Like I haven't found a support organization that can't benefit in some way from AI. The degree of benefit may vary from one industry to another or one support organization to another, but everyone can benefit from AI. So first bit of advice is take the step actually try something. Second advice is it's not AI for AI's sake. Like you've got to have a very clear business problem that you're trying to solve and make sure you focus on a very clear business objective when you decide to try AI. So it's not kind of a, oh, well, this is a nice technology, we should try it out. No, grounded in a very real business problem, and make sure that you explain that, particularly to your teams, because as we mentioned earlier, you want to get buy-in from your teams around using AI. They want to know why we're using AI, why it's important to the customer, why it's important to them. So when you ground it in a business challenge, then that kind of, which is the third tip, like communicate with your team early, communicate often, really make them understand why you're going down this road, what the benefit is, and get them on board, because tip number 4 is leverage the experience and knowledge of your own team, because when it comes to really understanding what's going to work for customers, they understand that better than anyone else. And while you might have this assumption, well, I think this will work for customers if we go down the AI route, run that by your team and they'll tell you pretty quickly, yeah, that'll work, that won't work, and here's how you can make it work. So getting buy-in from the team, making them actually contribute to your strategy and to your rollout is pretty key as well.
Yeah. Often what I say to folks as well is you don't have to go all in on day one. I think there's kind of a perception that it's all AI or nothing. And even for us, like we started quite small. Like you said, we started with the AI assist functionality. And then even when we rolled out Fin AI agent, we didn't do it for all customers immediately.
Correct.
We wanted to test it on like, one segment first and build from there. And similar with Copilot, we had a small group using it first and then we expanded, and I always want to remind people that, especially like within Intercom, there's a control element for, you can have AI working for some topics or some customers and then not others of your choosing. So you don't have to turn it on for everything in one go. And I think that's always one that when folks are getting going first, they're afraid of that control piece, and you can test it out and see how it goes. And you can, like, if you want to never hand over that control just for some topics or some customers, you have that choice.
Absolutely. And if you need to turn it off, you can turn it off.
Yeah.
Like if you make a mistake and something goes wrong, it's easy enough to turn it off, learn, and then go again. So the concept of it's a one-way, two-way door. This is a two-way door. Like you can go through that door, come back again, and really encourage people to try things. Like some of the experiments will work really well, some may not work well, and so you may need to learn from them and tune them. But it is very easy to have that level of control and get that granularity, so that you can actually learn a lot as you go along.
Okay, so crystal ball time. What are your predictions for the future of how support orgs are going to change as further AI advances happen, which are
Okay.
happening even as we speak, right?
Yes, there's lots of stuff happening as we speak. Um, so I think we've touched on a couple of things already. So new roles will evolve in support organizations, like we talked about conversation designer, knowledge manager, prompt engineering will be a thing as well. Like there's lots of new roles will evolve. And I think that leads to a world where there's a lot more long-term career options within customer service, customer support than there might have been in the past. Like very many people saw it as a kind of a step to something else in an organization. Whereas I think in an AI first world, there's going to be very fulfilling roles within support, and people will have longer term careers within a support organization. So that's kind of, one crystal ball thing. Attrition rates will go down is kind of the key part of that, which I think every support leader will be very happy about. Yeah. The second thing is that you will be able to scale your support operation in a way that's more effective, cost effective for your business. Like before, if a business doubled, typically you were doubling your support team, and that was unsustainable for many organizations. So yes, the size of a support team will change. And the biggest benefit, certainly for fast growing businesses, it means you can scale your support operation without having to scale your team in line with your business. So breaking that linearity in terms of scaling is a pretty key benefit for the future in terms of going AI first. I think the final point in terms of crystal ball for the future is really, when you think about the customer experience, customers really want to be able to use the product in the best way possible. And I think what's going to happen, some of the traditional post-sales roles in organizations are going to change. So the lines are going to blur between customer success, customer support, etc. And it's all going to be focused on how can we provide most value for customers. So a lot of traditional roles will merge and blur because of AI. AI will be able to automate a lot of the functions that are done across customer success, customer support, etc. So I think that's another thing that we're going to see, a redefinition of the post-sales experience for many organizations.
Cool. It all sounds very exciting. And I'm happy to be on this journey with you. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Ruth. As always, delighted to chat. I know we chat a lot about it, but it's been great to have the opportunity this morning to talk in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, and we'd have a lot more to chat about going into the future.
Absolutely.